Welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. Lo Myrick here, and I have my good friend Brian with me, and we'll do intros in a second, but I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining. Couple housekeeping notes. Highly suggest you put your phone down and maybe on Do Not Disturb. The point of doing this on a webinar versus on Instagram was it so that we could connect and we were all being present, and we'll talk a little bit about that as we go through tonight's topic. But social media can be super distracting. So we're here with you for about 30 minutes. We're gonna talk about internal communication, external communication, internal meaning with yourself, your self-talk, and then external with other people. And then we'll open it for a Q&A. So our section will probably go about 30 minutes. The Q&A, we'll open it up after that, but we will have a hard stop at 8:45. We know there's people super pumped to watch the Jordan documentary. If that is something you're watching tonight, just type in like B-ball for life or something in the chat. But we're so excited to be here, and I think that's it for housekeeping. Brian, is there anything else you wanted to add, and do you want to just share a little bit about yourself?
Nothing to add other than I love seeing people chiming in and joining us. That's amazing and wonderful, and love to have everybody here. I would start off quickly by saying that my mom, who's listening, knows full well that the moment Jordan hit the scene, I was one of, if not his biggest fan. I think I went to school for 4 or 5 years with nothing but Bulls paraphernalia on. And I currently teach 4th grade. And if you walk in my classroom, an entire wall is dedicated to Michael Jordan with jerseys and posters. And so even if the younger generation didn't get to see him play, his legacy lives on in my classroom. But
Wow.
Yeah. I will say just that I humbly join you all as a co-participant in this journey we're calling Being Human, and I look forward to just sharing and connecting about what it means to communicate on all levels. And actually, Lo, this popped into my being as you were talking, so I have an idea for a first very brief activity. So if you want to share a little bit about yourself first, and I can lead us in that if you want.
Well, you didn't share about yourself other than your Michael Jordan obsession.
Oh, well, I mean, other than I'm this person trying to figure out how to be human.
As we all are.
Yeah, I professionally have been an educator for, I'm going on 19 years in one way, shape, or form, primarily as a mental health professional, serving students anywhere from kindergarten all the way up through adults who are going back to school to get masters and PhDs. And so training and working with folks who are wanting to be a counselor, serving as a counselor, in primarily schools and universities, and also as of late working with primarily adults as an intimacy coach, just helping them and collaborating with them to figure out how to be in touch with themselves more, communicate better with themselves, and then with others in a very intimate way.
I love it. And I'm so excited for this like new chapter that you're opening. And if you guys are interested in following Brian, we'll share all the social stuff at the end. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Lo Myrick. I'm currently the marketing and training director at a global beauty and wellness brand, Mon8. And I'm also a trained life coach and have held a number of different roles, including with startups. And I just really love the journey of similar to what Brian said, like the journey to authenticity and creating my best self. So that's the path that I'm on, and I want to help other people do the same. And I work with a lot of businesses and individuals, entrepreneurs, to help them do that, to reach their highest potential. So today's talk came about, Brian and I were chatting, I think we're on a run, And we're just like, we should do a webinar on communication. And so this will be our first of many collaborations, I am sure. But you said an activity popped into your head. So before we dive into communication with self and self-talk, do you want to share that?
The activity?
Sure.
Yeah. So I'm going to rewind the tape in my life. This would have been 12 years ago. I was going through a really difficult time in my life. It led to a divorce with my wife at the time, who I was partnered with, and it was just a very difficult experience and really hard on many levels. And I started to experience very acute, very difficult to manage panic attacks. And I went to go see my family physician, family doctor, and he said, listen, you've got panic disorder, generalized anxiety disorder. He said I had both, and pretty severe depression, according to him. And so it suggested a number of different prescription drugs that I could take to help that. And I said, well, I'm not interested in that. Not to say that I don't agree with that at times for folks to choose that. It just didn't feel like the right thing for me. And so my wife at the time said, hey, listen, if you're not going to try these ways to help, why not check out this meditation group that meets once a week over at the university by where we lived? So I went there, and I'll never forget it. It was like it was yesterday. I walked in, and there was looked like a man and a woman sitting up front, and about 25 people in the audience sitting in chairs. I showed up about a minute late, and they were all sitting there with their eyes closed. And so I walked in, got comfortable. I had never done anything like this before. And when I finally let myself close my eyes, it was like a rush of 5,000 thoughts that came in. So I thought we could sit for just 30 seconds, no more than that. I'll watch the clock, but let's just settle in and see what communication might sound like or feel like if we just sat and closed our eyes and noticed what's going on. So find a comfortable spot, close your eyes, take a few deep breaths, and I will let you know when 30 minutes is gone. And you're just noticing what happens when you close your eyes.
30 seconds, not 30 minutes.
I promise you, 30, go, here we are. Oh, I said seconds, yes, seconds. Thank you.
Thank you. I love that activity is just a grounding way to get into this. I feel like a lot of us don't allow ourselves transition time. I know I'm really bad at it because I'm like, I'm going to fit the most that I can into this day. So I book myself back to back to back. Does anyone else do this? If you do that, type in the comments that you do that as well. But yeah, I'll just go. And you just don't realize that you need to give yourself that transition time so that you can just breathe and just be present in whatever it is you're doing. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was that?
I was going to say, where do we go from that?
Oh, well, forward always.
Lead us.
So let's, as I mentioned, I want to talk a little bit about self-talk and internal dialogue, and then jump into external dialogue, because I think it's very important to understand if you don't know what's going on here, it's going to be very difficult to communicate that to other people, and then have, you know, a better experience with them, and have a better experience for yourself. If your self-talk isn't right, it's just going to make it really hard to grow and evolve. Brian, do you want to share, and I have a little story I'll share about that, but do you have any kind of thoughts you want to share about self-talk, awareness, and how you began to just notice even?
Well, let us do that activity because I've been thinking about tonight, and that moment always comes to mind as that point in my life when I became aware that I have this awareness of this, I call it mental chatter, or some people refer to it in the meditation world as a monkey mind, where your attention is just swinging from tree to tree like a monkey. And in that moment, in that meditation space, I found myself aware of this awareness that I had of this talk in my mind. And I very quickly realized that it was leading me down a very dark path, and ultimately leading to what we in the psychology world call psychosomatic symptoms. So you have what's happening in the mind, and your body, which is the soma part, soma meaning body, is your body reacting to whatever is going on in the mind. And so for me, I was experiencing these, what we would call panic attacks. And for me, a panic attack meant my heart would start racing. I started to experience, thoughts in that moment, oh my God, you're gonna have a heart attack. So it's like, I would continue to what I would call self-sabotage. I love that word. I've mentioned it many times. The mind sabotages my experience with life. And I end up having an even more intensive panic attack. And it was compounded to the point where I almost was hospitalized because I couldn't get control of my mind. And I hope that the message tonight, one of them, is that actually we do have the ability to get control of the mind. The mind does not have to be in control. And when I close my eyes, I am allowed to decide whatever I want my attention to focus on. My mind is not in control.
I love that. And you shared a story with me just about how, I think it was the spiritual leader of one of the ashrams that you went to, you would come to him with a problem and he's like, and I'm paraphrasing your story, so feel free to correct, but you came to him with a life problem and he goes, I'm going to tell you the same thing that I tell everyone: take one breath, or be present for one breath.
Yes. Yep. Because what I learned in the beginning is that all of these great trainings that we can go to, and seminars and books and self-help books and TED Talks, were all great. But what I realized is that I was so overwhelmed with all this new information about how to meditate and breathe and do yoga, and I was still stuck in this rat race that many of us are in, where we always have to be producing. This idea of being productive, which I think a lot of us are struggling with right now because we're not working, or our work life is different. And so we feel this angst because in our mind we're saying, you're not being productive. And so for me, I never allowed myself to take more than one breath, and I wouldn't even allow myself to take that one focused breath. It's changed now, but back then, one breath felt like too much. And my teacher was right. It's just need to focus on the first breath there. That's the first step.
Was there anything that helped you realize that and then make the shift to be able to slow down? Like, were there any tools just for people who may be struggling with the same thing that helped you? Or was it just repetition of hearing the same message over time? And then finally sometimes that happens too. Just one day it sinks in differently.
Mm-hmm. Well, the first thing I would say is I didn't want to experience panic attacks anymore because they were horrible and debilitating. And I also didn't want to only rely on medication. I did end up using it for a time, and it was helpful, but I wanted to find another way that would be more sustainable for me. And the other thing was what another mentor said to me quite directly and rather forcefully, because he knew I was in a bind. He said, what do you want? was very stern with me, and I knew what he was asking. And my answer immediately came from my spirit, which was, I want inner peace.
Mm-hmm.
And so it came down to, how bad do I want that? And at some point I realized, I've got to stop all this rat race stuff, and I need to take several deep breaths.
Mm. I love that. And it seems so simple, but it's so powerful to just take that, 30 seconds that we did at the beginning, and maybe 5 deep breaths, feeling the air go in and out, your body moving and expanding. That's what it is to be present. And there's so much power in that. And I want to just see here, I think Juan said, reminding ourselves that controlling your thoughts as your words have power. Absolutely. And I do want to mention, if you guys have questions as we're going through this, or you want to comment something, please feel free to do that in the chat. If you want to do it just to us and remain anonymous, just make sure all panelists is selected. If you want everyone to see it, you can do all panelists and attendees. I'll share a little bit of my kind of becoming aware of my self-talk. Was when I started, it was after I graduated college and I'd begun working. I started working with a life coach who also happened to be a psychotherapist, thank goodness, because I needed that too, but didn't know. And just through the process of talking with her and journaling and becoming aware, like, she was like, you're in a depression. And I'm like, what's that? Because like, I didn't know how to describe any of these things. And then through the process of journaling and going through the work, you start to become more aware. So for me, it was literally, I really hadn't journaled maybe very intentionally before, but then when I started writing my thoughts out and witnessing what I was saying throughout the day, that helped me become more aware of my self-talk. And then kind of what Juan was saying, I realized that I got to create and control that and create my own story. And one thing that she helped me realize was that it is a story. Everything that happens in our head is a story, and we get to control that narrative. And so if you have a negative story playing in your head, know that it is a story, and you can disassociate that from yourself. And also, that will then help you create a better, more positive story. So that was super helpful for me in recognizing that, and then again shifting my own narrative, which then took me to, and in part of my life coach training then became getting curious. So instead of judging thoughts that happen, and we'll talk about this with others as well, rather than judging something, I was like, oh, that's really interesting. I wonder why that is. Or I'm curious about that, or I'd like to know about that. And I know you like to play with curiosity, but also noticing with just kind of a non-judgment.
For sure. Yeah, because the thoughts oftentimes just come in, as we probably experience, some of us, when we close our eyes. It's like the shade goes down in the house, and all of a sudden it's like this rush of stuff just flies in, and it's the experience of just, oh wow, whoa, look at all this coming in. Oh, I wonder where that came from. But you can lift the shade back up, and it all can fly back out, like in a house. Look, the window opens back up, and poof, it's gone again.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm just kind of watching the time. I want to shift into external communication, whether you're communicating with, let's start with like a partner, maybe, because I think that's like a good way to segue into this. It's so easy, I think, for us with anyone to realize that we set sometimes expectations for other people without communicating them to those people. And I can't remember, do you know who said this quote, that like the biggest misconception in communication that it is that it has taken place. And there's a lot, I don't think it was Brene, Julie, but thank you. We so often think what we're thinking has been said, but it hasn't. And simply sharing with another person your expectation of them whether it's, I'm thinking about when we're growing up, okay, like, is it someone's turn to take out the trash? Like, do we have the proper expectation of who's supposed to do it when, rather than someone just getting mad that it's not done? And so I think setting expectations is so crucial in romantic partnerships, especially.
For sure. Yeah, and I will share with everyone what I know family and friends who are on from my end have heard me say before, and this is experience working as a counselor with children and adults for 20 years, that I've not met anyone who is not wrestling with in some way with these two challenges, which I say are a sense of inadequacy and a, let's call it, fear of abandonment.
Mm.
And when it comes to communication with, let's say, a partner, and I'm thinking of an example, telling your partner that you would like them to turn the TV down when you're watching TV because it's too loud, and let's say that the partner reacts in a way that doesn't make you feel very good, then you feel inadequate because maybe something's wrong with me. Maybe I shouldn't mind that the TV is on too loud. Or ultimately, let's say that whatever is shared, the partner decides, I'm out of here, and terminates the relationship, and then there's this sense of abandonment. So I just always dig into what is that is there when you're feeling in your body that experience of inadequacy, if that's the word we should even use. And then, what does happen if that person does leave, which is an extreme example, but it happens all the time.
Yeah, no, I loved kind of where you were going on towards the end of that with the curiosity, like just getting curious about it rather than necessarily reacting. And that can be as simple, for people who are in newer relationships, it's like, ooh, like I'm not sure, is this person interested in me? Like, is this going to go anywhere long term? I'm not sure. And rather than saying like, so is this a thing or not? It could be like, hey, just been kind of wondering about this. How about you? Or if you've been with someone for a lot of years and you've noticed something's off in them, like, hey, I've noticed you've been quiet this week, or hey, you've kind of been more angry or temperamental this week. Is everything okay? And just checking in a loving and concerned way with that sense of curiosity, I think can shift a lot of dialogue to, instead of being combative or defensive, into inviting and let's have a conversation about this.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And many times it's a huge risk for people to speak their truth. And I certainly honor that and have experienced that myself, because I look back at my own marriage that ended, and there was so much about that ending when I'm able to look back, when I realized, wow, there was so much I didn't say in the moment for a number of reasons. And I have that appreciation that I was in many ways afraid to say something, didn't want to be rejected, didn't want to be laughed at, didn't want to be yelled at, didn't want to be contradicted. My ego was involved. And ultimately, it was that combination of I didn't want to be rejected, and I also didn't want to feel that sense of inadequacy. So I just avoided it altogether.
And that took you down a path. And I think since then you've learned, I'd rather go through that momentary uncomfortability to have to bring up the conversation, instead of all of the uncomfortability that happened because you didn't do it in that moment. Because for me personally, there's been so many times where I'm like, really don't want to bring this up right now. This is going to be awkward. I don't know what's going to happen. And then you do it and you're like, okay, that was good. We had that talk. No one died.
Yeah. And what's currently happened, yeah, exactly. No one died. That's haven't met many situations. I don't think actually any where someone spoke their truth and the other person just fell to the ground dead.
Yeah.
I'm just observing with curiosity what's happening now in our world, and there's a lot of tension, and I feel it. And I went to the supermarket today, and half the people are wearing masks and gloves, and the other half are just going on as if it's another day. And I'm thinking about that situation I shared with you, where two people I know had different opinions about how they should be interacting on a daily basis, being in close proximity to each other. And one person had one opinion about how she and her family should be interacting, and the other person had different opinions about how she and her family should be interacting with this other family. And
Yeah,
I think there were
let me provide a little bit of context for people.
Sure.
So everyone's involved in, obviously in quarantine right now. And there was a situation where neighbors were hanging out and their kids were playing. And then one day into quarantine, like it had already been quarantine, one of the neighbors was like, we don't want to play with your kids. We don't want the kids to play anymore. And it was just very abrupt. And the other neighbor was like, what? Like, personally offended. So that's just such a good example of, a very like head-butting dialogue rather than something productive, which could have been, hey, I've just been really concerned about the health of my kids. I have a brand new baby. I want our kids to be able to play, but I just don't know if it's the smartest thing right now. What do you think? And opening that door for a conversation, because there was a true friendship there. And so I think there's so many situations like that. I know that's like specific to our time, but it goes beyond that. There's so many times when all of us say something and we put it out there as a statement and we're like, this is what's going on. And the other person's like, what? Like, can we just, what just happened? Let's have a conversation about it.
And Lo, I've always found this to be true, and I hesitate to oversimplify it. However, experience has told me over the years that it really doesn't have to be as complicated as I think we try to make it. And really what it comes down to is first, owning your own experience, which everyone is allowed to have, period. And so in any relationship, no matter if it's a intimate sexual one or not, if someone is experiencing an emotion and they come with an authentic way of approaching it by saying, hey, listen, I feel this because of this going on, and ideally having a solution, or not. Maybe they don't know what a solution could be. It's just, I need to own this feeling I'm having in an authentic way. I don't know what better of a situation to be in. Even if that other person says, I disagree with you, or you can't feel that, you know what? They might think that way, but at least that person owned their own emotion. And I think that's the relief that you were just talking about. When we just own our truth and own our own human experience, there's this relief that we feel no matter what happens.
Right.
I hope you feel that relief, if nothing else.
Yeah. And I think and I love that you brought that up, because I forgot, we haven't talked about this in our kind of like pre-meeting, where like it could be where you're either mad at a romantic partner, a family member, friend, whatever, where you're like, I'm mad at you, or you aggravate me. When in reality, the statement should be, when this happens, or when you do this. I don't like to put it on the person, so I like to make it a little bit more like, when this happens, I feel insert. And that is the communication of the feeling and the uncomfortability. And then from there, you can say, can we talk about this? Or can we talk about this now? Can we talk about this tomorrow? Whenever is appropriate, because, and this was something we did want to share with everyone, tone, delivery, time, and place are extremely important factors in communication. Those four things: tone, delivery, time, and place. So the way that you communicate something in those four elements is incredibly powerful and can shift from one outcome to the completely opposite outcome, depending on how you choose to show up.
Absolutely. Wasn't there an acronym for that?
I shared for as far as like time and place, I guess, HALT, HALT, which is never make a decision or have a difficult conversation when you're hungry, angry, lonely, or tired. So when people try to have really serious discussions at night, that's usually a no-go because you're exhausted. Anytime someone is tired, it's just not a good time to chat. As far as personal relationships go, I've heard of a lot of people doing like an end of week check-in every week and just saying like, hey, this is what I thought you did well this week. This is what I'm struggling with. This is what I thought I crushed this week, just to share a win, and this is what I need more of. And then the other person shares and they can kind of give feedback. I love that because it's like, well, we know every Sunday at 2 p.m. we're going to talk about this. So if something comes up in the week, you don't have to freak out about it. You can be like, oh, I'm just going to add that to my list to talk about and we can work on it, because that's like co-creating a more positive relationship rather than, okay, we have to deal with this right now, right here, where it might not be the most, it might not be the best time for everyone. But when you know it's coming, it kind of releases the urgency of it.
Mm. And I would add to that, I'm loving the check-in at the end of the week.
Yeah.
It's beautiful.
I also have heard, I think it was Tim Ferriss was saying he does quarterly reviews, like more in depth, just to talk about goal alignment and bigger stuff with his romantic partner. This isn't like a work thing. I think that's important too. But I think that's super important. It seems like you guys agree.
Yes, I'm noticing the yeah.
And I know we're kind of at time. We said we're going to keep this to 30 minutes. I do want to talk about in the workplace, just one or two quick things as far as leadership goes. And if you guys have questions, I'd love to know so that we can start transitioning into the Q&A. But as far as leadership goes, what makes a good leader is checking in with your people. How are you doing? I've been noticing something's off. I mean, all of the stuff that we've just talked about, having those set communications. And if you are an employee and your boss or manager isn't doing that, ask for it. That's the time. That's the time to reach out and communicate, hey, I'm having a problem. Hey, I'm facing a challenge. And that's the same, like, I know we have some college students on here. If you're struggling with something, reach out. There is nothing wrong with asking for help.
Well, yes. And I'm reading some of the notes on the side. Would love to dig into that in the Q&A for sure. Is it Victoria? I see you. And
I think there's a couple other anonymous ones that we'll share. Anything else as far as communication with others? I mean, I think to me, if I was going to summarize, it's honestly just come from a place of curiosity. Like first of all, bring it up, like have the communication. And then when you're starting the communication, come from a place of curiosity. And then those four things, tone, delivery, time, and place, really, really matter. I can't stress that enough. But for me, I think that can be applied to any relationship you have, not just a romantic relationship.
Mm. Yeah, and I would add to end, having, been in graduate degrees where I've had to read what probably was hundreds of books on psychology and then leadership, and definitely finding some themes. And in this day and age, we're just inundated with information. But remember that the truth is within. I hate to sound cliche. And I found in times of my life, I was incessantly looking for answers in books and TED Talks and different trainings, and they can be helpful, no doubt. I think it's also so important to take the time, especially now. I mean, this is a really hard time, and also can be a gift if we have some extra time. I don't want to minimize the stress people feel with the changes in our lives. I certainly recognize that. Taking the time to check in with ourselves in some quiet space. And I know I said to you, Lo, that I only recommend one book, but I take that back. I recommend two. And the one that I'm thinking of today is this book called The Four Agreements.
Oh, yes.
If you
Amazing.
approach a communication with yourself or others, let's just say others, with ourselves, that may be a little bit more complicated to digest thinking of these, but it's, don't take anything personally, don't make assumptions, be impeccable with your word, and do your best. And to go into it with the idea that you're going to present yourself in that way, and you're going to live into that, and hopefully the other person will too. Whether they are or not doesn't matter. I'm going into it knowing that this person is doing her best, doing his best. This person is speaking impeccably with his or her word, and I'm not going to make any assumptions or take anything personally. Wow. Beautiful stuff. Not easy to always do, but beautiful.
No, that is so beautiful. I think, and it just kind of aligns with everything that we've shared, coming from that place of curiosity and in not being attached to a certain outcome, but being open. And we'll all do a recap and share the notes out with everyone, including the book that Brian just referenced. And go through this. I want to thank you so much. This has been, I hopefully helpful for you guys. I'd love for you to share, we'll still go into a Q&A, but I'd love for you to share just a takeaway from this in the comments right now. And if you have any questions, please pop them in. If you want it to be anonymous, just let us know and we won't say your name. I think that there's so much more to be said on these topics. I'm going to read one of the questions now. I'm wondering how to help myself with the self-talk, self-sabotaging on my team. I'm always telling myself I'm not good enough or comparing myself to my teammates because I feel judged and not good enough. Brian, do you want to share? I mean, do you have anything to share on that first reaction?
Well, as I was saying, I sat in on a beautiful training, if you will, last night that was on the law of attraction. And I've heard this over the last several years that our thoughts are powerful and we potentially could be attracting in our lives what we think about ourselves and what we deserve and what we want and who we are. And the message, I think, is that there's something to be said about that. And so when I think about someone who is entering in situations and there's comparing, there's judging, you think you're being judged, you don't even know if you are or not. Even if you were, going back to not taking it personally and not making assumptions, what about shifting the thought pattern to, I am enough, I am doing my best, this is me, and I love who I am right now.
Yes.
It's critical
Yes.
to shift the thought patterns.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it comes back to the stories that we were talking about earlier. You get to write that narrative and you also get to tell the other narrative, like, F you, you don't belong here. You don't have a seat at this table. And I find when you start noticing those thoughts, that self-sabotage, write all that down and then almost write a rebuttal next to it so that when you hear it come up or when you start to that story starts to come up, you start to tell yourself that story, you immediately have something you can replace it with. And I've done that for years. I still do that when stuff comes up and I'm like, that's a story. No, I know that I am enough. I know that I am powerful. I know that I can do whatever it is I want to do. The other thing that I'll share is people are going to judge you no matter what. And I say this with my other best friend, Janie. People are going to judge you no matter what, so you might as well do what you want. It doesn't matter if you're trying to fit in or you're working the hardest or it doesn't matter if you're number 1 or number 3, 25 or 50. People are going to judge you. So F it. Like, I'm so serious. I mean, if you're doing nothing, people are going to judge you. If you're LeBron James, people are going to judge you. If you're Michael Jordan, people are going to judge you. So, I mean, I think if we remember that and you just come back to yourselves, tell yourself the story you want to believe, I think that's really powerful too, is telling yourself the story you want to believe and you want to be true. And it will be true.
Take my pink iPhone OtterBox case as the example for tonight, because I grew up being told just by culture and believing that, oh, boys are supposed to like black, blue, brown, and gray. And that, as I grew older, found I don't think that those are my favorite colors. I actually love pink. And so instead of
I love that you love pink.
What everyone else thinks about my phone case, I just went with the pink case, and still have found out that people will judge me. And the students at school, when they see it for the first time, ask me everything from my sexual identity to my gender to everything in between. And it's all just is what it is, because I love what you said. We are judging nonstop all the time. We judge the weather, we judge our food, we judge our hair, we judge our age, we judge his hair, her hair, their
hair.
What is it?
They, people that prefer that pronoun. Yeah.
Them, they all the time. I like this. It's a constant judgment of I like, don't like, and it's on a spectrum. It's either I hate that, I love it, or somewhere in between.
Yeah.
Millions of judgments a day. It's just the human condition. This is what we do.
Yes, we do. And you're so good at noticing. I think you were telling me about a bike ride you went on. And again, if you guys need to drop, please feel free. I promise we will end before 9, but there's some good questions coming in here. So if you have to drop, no worries. We'll send out the recording. But Ryan was telling me about a bike ride he went on earlier this week. And just, you said you were like, oh, it's kind of cold. Like the wind's kind of cold. Like, I don't like that. I should have worn another jacket. And you started to go in this thing and you're like, hold on, like, let's pump the brakes up here. What if I just noticed that is wind on my body right now? And then I think you also said there was like an angry or kind of aggressive driver behind you, and you were like letting it, all this rage build up. And then you're like, you know what? We're just gonna let this go.
I think there's a famous movie that came out recently for kids, and the line in the song is "Let It Go." What is that? I don't know what movie.
Frozen. What?
Frozen. Let It Go. I'm sorry, I should know this. I have 2 nieces, Elsa, and then who else? Anna. And I will say, for those still listening,
Frozen 2 is also very good. I'm just saying.
It is. I see. I've got to see both of them. But I, of course, heard the songs. When I was in graduate school for my counseling degree, it came up, and it has come up thousands of times since. But there's a great Mad TV. I know friends and family, you've heard this before. Mad TV clip. YouTube it. Bob Newhart is the lead actor in it, and he is a psychologist. And there's someone who comes in with all of these neuroses and thoughts, belief systems about everything that are causing all this anxiety and depression, which resonated with me, because it's like, well, that was me. Yeah. That is me still at times. And his classic feedback for this person is just stop it, which is not easy, and yet could be so simple. Like when I was on that ride and I was in this whole thing in my head about why was I so dumb to leave my jacket behind, and now look at you, you're so cold. And I went, nope, stop right now, stop. I'm driving 20 miles an hour going down the road, stop. You're just noticing the air on your body. This is what it feels like to have this temperature and this wind on my body. It was not a negative or positive. It was just, this is what it feels like right now.
Yeah.
It is.
That's, I'm getting a little feedback. That's so powerful, that not having to place it in the negative or positive bucket. This is just what's happening bucket.
Yep.
And to wrap up that thought, and because there's a couple more questions I want to get to, just with the whole, like, people are going to judge you no matter what, like, be yourself and your people will find you. That's like the best I can say. I've learned this over years. And then you're like fully you, and people like you and they love you and they want to be around you more. And the more that you are yourself, you're going to radiate this energy that people are drawn to. But if you don't just be yourself, it's not going to shine. So no one's going to be able to be attracted to it. Okay. During quarantine specifically, I have found that certain personal conversations in relationship are hard to have over the phone. What advice do you have about that when you can't see someone in person? I would say FaceTime is great. I hope, or Zoom or WhatsApp. There's lots of different apps if you're looking for something specifically, but I think the more you can be face-to-face is powerful. As a coach, I've done a lot of coaching calls just over the phone with no video. And honestly, sometimes that leads to bigger breakthroughs and reveals on the client's end because they don't feel the pressure and they can share more freely. However, if the person that you're talking with doesn't feel safe, then it's not going to matter anyway. So I think if you can FaceTime, and then, and you have to, like, it's almost setting the tone of the conversation. I know that we'd rather have this conversation in person, but we can't right now. So we have to have it in whatever setting, because I don't want to not have it. Do you have anything else to share on that?
No, I love that.
I like that you're taking away curiosity, writing tips, book recommendations helpful. On Wednesdays we wear pink. We are label making machines. Wow, that's great.
Wow.
We are label making machines. We are.
It's like back in the day, I can see at like Kmart. I'm dating myself here. With the little the thing, and had the sticker gun thing, and it was
yeah.
We're just smacking those things on everything. Oh my God, I love that. We use that.
Or I had my own personal label maker that I would put on all my supplies and stuff. And I think my mom would do that. Like, she'd put our names on everything.
Oh yes. My dad did the same. We've got tags on everything from vacuums to blenders.
Hilarious. Okay, I think we covered all the questions. I'm looking through. Anything else you guys have? I'd love. It seems like a lot of people were struggling with time and tone. Again, tone is how you're delivering. And again, like time of day, time in the relationship. But I think, anytime you're feeling like you want to have a conversation with someone is an okay time to have a conversation with them.
It's never too late. It's never too late to speak your truth.
It's not.
Mm-hmm. And I want to end with saying out loud that I hope, I guess we can all see the names, but the friend out there who was mentioning about being on the college acro and tumbling team, and I think back to really, I would say there was a moment in my life where they think there's a book out called the Subtle Art of Not Giving a
Yes.
SHIT, something like that. When I broke free from this world of caring about what everybody thought about me, and celebrating me and welcoming myself into the world and letting people gravitate towards me or not. But I almost found like I would get up every day with this sense of excitement, like I'm done with that part and I'm just showing up as my true self with the pink phone. And this is it, and it's beautiful. So I hope that you are the same and just show up to those damn tumbling meets as yourself, and people will be drawn to you. And
Yeah,
that's a beautiful thing.
I love that. Like, what's your, okay, so takeaways for everyone, because I like to make these things actionable. Like, Brian was like, my pink phone. So for yourself, what is the thing you're going to do? And that could be like a trigger or a reminder that you're like, you know what? I don't care. This is my thing. Figure it doesn't, you have to answer now, but think about it. Like, what is the thing that's going to remind you to be you, to show up as you? For yourself, if you do not have a journaling practice, I highly recommend try it for 7 days. You can do it. I like to do it in the morning, or you can do it at night and kind of reflect. Just write for 10 minutes. Set a timer and just write all the thoughts you have. If you do not have a journaling practice, if you do, maybe something more advanced you can do for yourself is create those more positive stories, because we can all do it. I mean, we're never done growing. Create the more positive stories that you want to tell yourself. And I actually used to do this more, and I recently started it up again as I'm writing stuff on my windows and on my walls, like things I want to remember. So I have, like, I'm looking right now, I have abundance, simplicity, be present, everything I desire is within me. So I think these cues, the more that we see these messages, the more that they're going to become ingrained in us. And those are the stories that we are going to remember. And remove the costume, get out of the character, be you. Yes, absolutely, Clint. Anything else, or any kind of like challenges that you want to give the people, just for like something they can do for themselves, like a self-talk or awareness piece?
Are you asking the crowd?
No, I'm asking you.
Oh shoot, I'm sitting here looking at the side of the Zoom like, okay, good, this is gonna get good. No,
If anyone wants to offer something, please do. But do you have anything?
no, I'm sorry. I was so entranced by the chat going on over at the side.
Well,
Clint got me all.
you guys
Clint
are
got,
on the hook now. You better submit something great, or else Brian's gonna be disappointed.
well, Clint got me all worked up about the remove the costume, get out of the character.
Okay, we're gonna have to save this for another time because we need to end. But I do have something cool about costumes and character that we'll share offline, and then maybe we'll have a whole nother thing about that and
Yeah.
being yourself. And as far as others, I think my challenge to you guys this week for external relationships, I challenge you to have a conversation that you've been putting off, or that you've not wanted to have, or that, it could be you needed to have it for 3 days, or maybe you needed to have it for 30 years. I don't know. But have that conversation this week before next Sunday at 8 p.m. and challenge yourself to think about those 4 things: tone, delivery, time, place, and just be more curious. How can you be overall more curious in your life? Honestly, it is the root of everything, and it has made me so much better.
Yes.
I like Julie. I like this. Okay, we want to close with 1 full minute just to reflect and be quiet, or meditate, or whatever you might call it, before you transition to the Jordan doc or whatever else you're doing. So let's do that right now. I'm going to set my timer. Anything else you want to share, Brian?
Oh, we have to end on that. I'm in full agreement of that.
All right, let's do it. So I'm going to set a 1 minute timer right now, and it'll go off so everyone can hear it. But let's all just kind of close. Again, if you need to leave, please feel free to do that. But for those of you that can stay and close with us, we'd love to have you. And close your eyes and begin. Thank you guys. We appreciate you joining. We will send out the meeting notes. Appreciate you participating, and we will do more of this in the future. Let us know what else you'd like more of. Brian, thank you so much. I'm extremely grateful for you and grateful for each one of you who joined us tonight.
Thank you.
All right, guys. Take care. Have a wonderful evening.
Go Bulls. Bye.
Bye.